Morning everybody, Brandon here, Mr. B's Fishing Things. I'm here in my little fish room this morning, doing a early morning feeding. The lights aren't even really on in any of the tanks or anything and stuff. And seen a couple of intake sponges that needed cleaning. So I thought, hey, let's take you guys along and show you how I do that. And I'm telling you, I'm a big believer in these intake sponges. Here's why. Okay, so quick look around the fish room. As you see, no lights are on, like I was saying. A little bit of natural light coming in this morning around the blinds, and I keep this one open a little bit. I know it's going to be pretty glary, but it demonstrates what I'm talking about. I leave this one open a little bit. The sun is not direct coming into that window. It's actually over on this side of the building, and so I let a little bit of sunlight come in there, and then I'll close that as the sun moves around that way. That tank never algaes up or anything, and there's nothing that I do to control it in there. There is a large pleco in there. So any little bit of algae that might grow on there is good for him because it's a little bit less that I have to feed him. It's a common pleco. I know, common pleco. So, and then those are my 10s down there. So, and this project that we're still working on. All right, so intake sponge. Take a look at this one. See what's going on there? How it's bunching up? Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So, might be a little awkward, but I'm going to show you how I do this. So I get myself a nice dry net. It's been cleaned and air dried off and everything, make sure there's nothing going on there. I get a couple of buckets. I took this smaller bucket here. Got just a little bit of water in it. That's good water. I encourage a person to use tank water from the tank that you are getting the sponge from. So, homemade sliding top. I put my net in the water around the sponge. And pull it off. Now the reason for the net is because if that sponge is dirty enough to slow up how that filter was working and bunch it all up like it was, then it's also dirty enough to let a lot of crap back into the tank if we don't do it this way. Okay? So, that's simple. Now, let's come up here where we can see things a little better. And we'll attempt to balance a bucket and show you what we're doing here. Okay, so here we are. So now, dropped it in, and look, it doesn't really look all that bad, does it? Let's see what happens. And all I'm doing is squeezing it and releasing it. Squeezing it, let it fill up with water again, and release it. And if you feel it in your hand, it actually feels really slow for the sponge to puff back up again. That's because it's pretty saturated with fine particulate matter. Now, I'm going to call this a side note. People encourage you to keep this water that comes off of this and use it to jumpstart another tank. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. You can. Absolutely you can do that. That will work excellent. Because of all this little particulate matter, it is covered in beneficial bacteria that you can use to get another tank going. My theory on that is use the sponge. Put the sponge on the intake of the filter you're setting up for that tank. Keep a couple extra ones and use them to get them going. Or what, if I know I'm going to be doing another tank soon, i.e. we're going to be doing another tank soon, then what I've done is kept some media in another tank, seeding it. And that's horrible glare there. Hopefully you can see that. There's some bags of sponge and media of choice to jumpstart that. Okay, so back to our cleaning. So that is all the stuff that came out of that sponge. So it has a hole in it, no hole on this end. I can't recommend for you a name brand or anything like that, because these are just from overseas, ordered them from China. They take roughly a decade to get to my door, but they do come. And once they're here, they work excellently. Now, there are different grades. The sponge can be very fine or very coarse. The finer it is, the sooner it's going to block up. The coarser it is, the more it's going to let through, so you need to kind of decide. I like the coarser ones to use on these pumps that I use just for circulating water and creating surface agitation. I keep those in each one of these tanks. So, here's where our sponge goes. Let's reinstall. Pretty simple process. Put it in the tank. Make sure it's slid up on there really good. Checking the flow, it's excellent. And we're off to the races. So, it's extra filtration, using these little pumps and using an intake sponge. Now I use these intake sponges on all of my filters. Every filter in the house has an intake sponge on it. Here you can see one on the intake of an AquaClear filter. And you can see the plant material and so on that it's catching. That's keeping that from being inside of that filter. This is Bella that you're hearing in the background. Can't help herself. Gotta come say hello and get a belly rub. All right, Belle. These intake sponges, some you can order very small hole. A little bit larger, larger hole. Makes sense? So they'll fit on a variety of intakes that way. You can sort of see through that one, see a little bit of the light, so I'm using a background here that's white. Hopefully you can see it better. So it allows more things to go through it, but it's sponge material. The beauty of sponge material, you know, is it per square inch, I don't think there's anything that has any more surface area than a sponge. So it helps collect extra beneficial bacteria in your tank, or I wouldn't say extra because there's only so much in your tank no matter what. But it's a great place for it to collect in a high flow area, which is the intake of your filter, and it greatly prolongs the amount of time needed between changing or cleaning a filter of any sort. It's kind of like your first defense in catching things. It makes a small filter a big filter. Because maybe you can't fit extra stuff inside of the hang-on back that you might have or something along those lines. Okay, so here's all the dirty stuff from that single sponge rinsing. Now, I don't do multiple sponges in the same tank water. That is specific to that tank. That tank had water from that tank. Now, although I run the same water in every tank in my house, you have to watch cross-contamination even within your own house, even within your own tanks, your own fish room, wherever you have them. If you have multiple tanks, then you're going to have to watch cross-contamination. Be careful how you do that. You must trust what you have going on with your own stuff, of course, but you want to be very careful. So now this here water though, this isn't waste to me. This is wonderful stuff. You can't buy this stuff. This goes in my houseplants. So we're going to call that a hump day quickie. Intake sponges. Try them out. You'll be glad you did.